The rain drummed a steady, hollow rhythm against the umbrellas gathered around the open grave. 78 years of a life, reduced to a mahogany box sinking into the mud. Sophia stood at the front, head bowed, her shoulders shaking with a rhythmic measured cadence. She kept her eyes directed at the wet earth, ensuring no stray tear betrayed her stillness. Beside her, the mourners shifted, their boots sinking deep into the saturated ground. She did not look at them. She looked past the casket, calculating the weight of the estate, the properties, and the $900 million, now waiting for a signature. A gust of wind pulled at her hair, and she reached up to smooth it, her movements precise and devoid of hesitation. She glanced at the lawyer standing near the edge of the canopy. He was checking his watch. She checked hers. The ritual was almost over. The finality of the burial mattered less than the paperwork waiting in the office across town. She exhaled. A sharp, controlled breath that vanished into the cold air and took a half-step forward as the lead mourner began to toss the first handful of dirt onto the lid. The office smelled of floor wax and old paper. Dust motes danced in the light filtering through heavy curtains. Sophia sat at the head of the long table, her fingers interlaced, tapping a rhythmic beat against the wood. The lawyer cleared his throat, the sound sharp in the quiet room. He unfolded the document, his eyes scanning the lines with clinical detachment. Sophia leaned forward, her lips curling into a faint, expectant smile. She watched him turn the page, waiting for the mention of the estate. The lawyer stopped. He adjusted his glasses and looked directly at her. He cleared his throat again, then read the clause. $1. The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Sophia blinked, her smile freezing before it shattered into a jagged line of confusion. She stood up, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. The lawyer continued, his voice calm, naming the gardener, Michael, as the sole beneficiary of the $900 million. The room erupted. Sophia lunged toward the desk, her hands sweeping the papers aside as she screamed at the wall. Michael remained by the door, his hand gripping the frame, his face pale as he stared into the sudden, violent storm of her fury. The mansion had become a cage of polished marble and silence. In the study, Arthur sat behind a heavy desk, recording his thoughts into a small device. He detailed the dates, the missing assets, and the calculated coldness of the woman who shared his home. Every interaction with her was a performance. Every request for money was a strike against his trust. He closed his eyes, listening to the muffled sounds of the estate. Then, the scene shifted. He was in the garden, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. Michael moved the wheelchair with steady, rhythmic care, navigating the stone paths. Arthur looked at him, noting the calloused hands that tended the roses. Michael did not ask for favors. He asked about the history of the soil. He listened to Arthur's stories not to gain an inheritance, but to understand the man. Arthur watched the way Michael treated the plants, with patience, never rushing the growth. It was the antithesis of the house behind them. In the quiet shade of an oak tree, Arthur finally asked what Michael would do with wealth. Michael didn't hesitate. He spoke of his sister's surgery, of building a public garden where people could rest. Arthur leaned back, his grip on the armrest relaxing as he realized he had found the only person who did not want to consume him. The lawyer raised a hand to silence the room. He unfolded a second handwritten envelope, the final letter from Arthur Bennett. His voice deepened, reading the words aloud. He spoke of kindness that had no price, of a man who valued the earth more than gold. Sophia stopped her tirade, her breath hitching as the lawyer described the specific moments of care Michael had provided. The room grew deathly still. Every word was a hammer blow to her expectations. She gripped the edge of the mahogany table, her knuckles white, her face draining of color, as the letter detailed her own calculated isolation of the man who had now outsmarted her from the grave. The lawyer finished with a final, searing indictment of greed. Sophia's legs gave way. She slid to the floor, her hands clutching at the air, her rage turning into a hollow, breathless tremor. She curled inward, staring at the polished floor. Across the room, Michael stood frozen. He did not move. He did not speak. Tears tracked lines through the dust on his face as he looked at his own calloused hands, unable to grasp the magnitude of the truth. The silence of the room was absolute, broken only by the sound of Sophia's ragged, uneven breathing against the silence of his disbelief. The heavy iron gates that once locked the world away swung open and stayed there. Michael acted with the same steady rhythm he used to tend the garden. He walked into the hospital where his sister recovered. The medical bills, settled by the estate that Arthur had entrusted to him. The staff stayed on, now working for a man who knew their names and respected their labor. Soon, the high walls were replaced by open paths. The manicured, sterile lawns were redesigned into a vibrant public park, teeming with residents who moved freely where they were once forbidden. Children played near the fountains while the elderly sat on benches, shaded by the same oaks where Arthur once found peace. A bronze sign near the entrance caught the morning light, bearing the name of Arthur's first wife, a final honor restored. Michael stood on the perimeter, watching the flow of people through the space he had saved from greed. He did not possess the fortune for his own gain, he became its steward. The vast, empty halls of the mansion had been replaced by the genuine laughter of a community. True wealth had never been the balance in a bank account. It was the simple, enduring act of kindness that survived long after the doors were closed. The story ended not with gold, but with the quiet, green growth of a legacy that belonged to everyone.